So we'll look into why we're reviewing NAC's grants. Basically, there was a call for review. We had feedback from artists and arts organizations who wanted to give us comments and ideas on how to improve the grants scheme. We also felt it was very timely to review since most of the grants have been around since 1991 or 2000. So we basically want to address the differentiated needs of a growing arts sector with greater diversity, to address also different areas of practice, stages of growth. We want to develop intermediaries and audiences. We are looking at going beyond funding in terms of providing more spaces under our new arts housing framework, and also more information, resources, and guidance to help artists along the way. And at the same time, we are improving our grant processes to streamline the process of applying for a grant, providing more seamless support, and to cultivate greater dialogue and feedback for transparency. So what has changed? These are the key changes in our new grants framework. Basically, there is a simpler outcome-based framework, expanded eligibility. There is also targeted support versus a one-size-fits-all kind of system, and of course, greater transparency. So if you look at this, you'll see that this was what we used to have previously. If any of you might have been familiar with our grants, there are altogether like 14 grants there, but we've simplified them and recategorized them into just seven types of grants. And so now in terms of expanded eligibility, we are extending it to also collectives, amateurs, semi-professionals. For amateurs and semi-professionals, they're eligible for the presentation and participation grant, which I will talk about later, and also for-profits companies. And we are supporting new forms of practice and activities as well. So it goes beyond the usual kind of art forms that we may be more familiar with. So in terms of the targeted support for organizations, we have different tiers. We have the major grant and the seed grant. This caters to organizations that are different stages of development. So the major grant really is a professional type of grant that looks at medium expansion for an organization. The seed grant, however, is really for startups. So if you are less than 3 years old, you can come to us for a seed grant. For productions, we have different tiers also, the presentation and participation, which is basically tiered at allowing for a greater diversity of activities. So that's why I said earlier, this caters to also semi-professionals and amateurs. The production grant, however, is really more for a larger scale kind of presentation, and you'll see what kind of quantum it looks at later. And then for capability development, in the past, we used to support only individuals, but now we're extending that to organizations. This really outlines what we're trying to do in terms of our processes, more dialogue, more details, and a more seamless process. Okay, going into the grants proper, like I said earlier, the seed grant looks at seeding new startups or young organizations below 3 years. It is capped at 70% of the average qualifying cost, and also it goes up to 150K at the max per financial year. The major grant, however, is applicable for 3 cycles only. So if you have been on the major grant, say for three cycles, that's 9 years. After that, what happens is that we have a major review of your organization, and we would then ask you, okay, so what is your next strategy for taking the organization further? And then the funding is, of course, then determined by what you tell us. We've simplified the budget templates, all the application forms. There are interviews for you to actually share your plans with us more directly, as well as sharing of panel feedback. Because in the past, we had feedback that applicants would not know what the panels had to say about their applications. Okay, so for creation, this is open to artists. Collaborations are also possible. We cap support at 50K per project. For literary arts, that goes up to 35K. And this process takes up to 18 months. Again, there are interviews and pitching sessions involved. There is a third eye. By third eye, we are referring here to, say, somebody else who comes in to look at the process of your work. So it could be a dramaturg, for example, or another curator. And there is an open window for support in production and the presentation stage. So yes, we look at creation of original works mainly, but we also factor in adaptation or redevelopment of works across disciplines, as well as translation. Okay, the production grant is actually a new grant. It supports very large-scale kind of projects. So this would be things like, say, conferences, competitions, art fairs, festivals, international co-productions. The cap is also 150K per year at the max. Now, presentation and participation is probably the most widely accessible grant. It used to comprise actually something like 5 different types of grants, but we've realized that actually it can be simplified by just calling it or collapsing it into this category called the presentation and participation. So there are 6 application windows a year. That's every 2 months. Support is capped at 50% of the qualifying costs at up to 50K per year. And the special thing about this grant is that it can support projects by amateurs. If you have never done an art exhibition and you just want to try out, put your work out there, this could be a grant that you can try applying for. So we support performances, exhibitions, literary and art form publications, co-created projects with members of the public, conferences and festivals, and music EPs. So some of you may ask, what then is the difference between the production grant and the presentation and participation grant? So the production grant is really for significant impact kind of works. They are local, or they can be local or international presentations. The cap is much higher at 150K, as opposed to the presentation and participation, which goes only up to 50K per financial year. And of course, the production grant, as you realize, there are only 2 application windows. So you can't just put in your application as and when. And it's much more stringent in its selection because we convene a panel for this, an external panel. Okay, so the market and audience development grant used to be these 3 grants called the international travel, the market development, and the international collaboration, which is actually it can be quite confusing for even artists. So what we've done is to collapse it, and now support goes up to 50% of the qualifying cost at up to 70K per year. You can apply for up to 3 travel-related grants per FY, and it is open to intermediaries as well, organizations. Okay, capability development is something different also because we now extend it to organizations. Previously, it was the Artist Professional Development Grant, which supported artists to go for short-term kind of training courses, less than a year usually. And then we also had the International Artist Residency Scheme, which supported both local and international residencies. We've collapsed both into the Capability Development Grant Scheme. It's open 6 times a year. Support capped at 70%, up to 75K per FY for organizations. Now, the key thing about this is that it's really an incentive to help organizations to defray manpower costs and to help them invest in upgrading their staff's capabilities. For individuals, it's up to 20K per FY. So activities we support would be things like courses and workshops, residencies, even in-house training, sending your staff on training, internships, mentorships, apprenticeships, work attachments. And we are also open to intermediaries or organizations developing training programs for the rest of the industry. Okay, for travel, we are trying to encourage actually our applicants to ask themselves, what is the purpose of my travel? I mean, rather than sending just an application for travel, we are trying to encourage applicants to really make a case for their travel, so that the grant can really be put to better use. So some of the scenarios for supporting travel would be for production if you have a very strong collaborative project with an overseas partner that would have a significant impact for your project. Or if you're attending a festival conference, you're presenting a paper maybe somewhere, or if you are training, you're investing in a residency overseas. Okay, the research and development grant has no application windows at all. You can come to us anytime. This is open to organizations and individuals with research expertise. I believe this one is also open to foreigners. So it's not just Singaporeans, PRs for the rest of our grants. This one is open to foreigners as well. It supports up to 100% of the qualifying costs at up to 50K per financial year. And the researcher will retain the intellectual property, although NAC may use and publish the findings. Research priorities for NAC would be the artistic practice of art forms in Singapore, the impact of the arts on society, and policies and practices that shape our local arts development. So this actually gives you the summary of who is eligible for what, because although we've condensed them into 7, I know it can still be quite a lot to digest. So this actually details out very sharply what you can apply and what you can't apply for. So this graph gives you a quick picture of how much we've funded our arts groups over the years. Essentially, support through grants has actually doubled from FY 2008. All the information can actually be downloaded from the website. The slides are all up there. And the next application window for the presentation and participation grant, if anybody is interested, is actually 15th of April for the next cycle.